Welcome back to Painting Lines. The Shanghai Masters just wrapped up, and it might have been the most unexpected fairy tale result in tennis history. I mean, I knew that it was going to be a pretty atypical tournament after Alcaraz and Sinner, not playing, and then the top seeds dropping out as well, but I did not see this coming. Last week, we talked about how the draw was wide open, and we just saw the lowest ranked player in history to win an ATP Masters 1000. And not only that, but he played his cousin in the final who was ranked outside the top 40. So, Aidan, I'm going to ask you a pretty loaded question here to kick this episode off. Are Vacherot and Rinderknech here to stay, or was this just one big fluke?
Well, I think the only thing I can say to that is that I don't think it can really be called a true fluke because there was nothing really super lucky about either of their runs to the final. Like you look at who Vacherot beat, he beat Bublik, Rune, and Djokovic, or some of the highlighted names. Whereas Rinderknech beat Zverev, Lehechka, FAA, and Medvedev. So it wasn't like it was lucky that either one of them made the final. It wasn't like FAA in Madrid last year. Instead, I feel like we kind of have to address their runs in a positive way and be like, hey, is this a proof that these guys have that top level and like they have the potential to be here and stay in the top 40 based on this tournament? But I don't know if I can say that that is actually a signal that these guys are going to stay in the top 40, but it definitely shows they can hold a top 10 level for like a full tournament, which is something I don't even know if I can say about a lot of guys that are in the top 10 right now, because even those guys, seems like a lot of the time they don't play a full tournament at a top 10 level. They eventually just kind of fall off at some point.
Yeah, that's pretty funny you said that. But as far as you had mentioned, you don't know if they're going to stay in the top 40. I feel like now all they needed was this breakout, and especially Vashro, because he goes from outside the top 200 to inside the top 40. So now he basically qualifies for every tournament, right? So all he needs to do is put up a pretty decent result. He doesn't need to win any more titles, and he can be a comfortable top 40 player for, another 5, 6 years, right?
Yeah, no, that is the positive of a massive result like this is like once you're in the top 40, you only have to win a round or two at these big tournaments. All of a sudden, you go from having to battle through qualifying to being able to just be like, okay, I'm auto qualified into this. I just have to win the round of 128 and maybe the round of 64 at like a slam. And that's going to help bolster your ranking so that you stay in a decent spot.
Yeah, definitely. But going back to the fact that we had, two pretty unexpected players, two two people that were the last people on people's minds to win the tournament. What does this say about the state of tennis right now?
I mean, I'll be honest. I feel like this tournament kind of threw a wrench into everything I thought I knew about tennis because earlier this year, for example, I made that comment when Lois Boisson made that crazy run in the Women's French Open. And I was like, something like that could never happen in the men's side. I was like, the separation skill level is just too high. And it's weird because I feel like in the last 20 years of tennis history, the players kind of ranked from like 5 to 25 were truly generational talents that were just underappreciated because of their like inability to break through against the big four and didn't get the results at the Grand Slam level, but they were still like the peak of the game and like they would beat a player outside the top 100 95% of the time. But the past couple of years, it feels as though like the talent has really just been distilled into two guys, Alcaraz and Sinner. And like Djokovic still battles, but his body just can't hold up and he eventually drops, like kind of what he showed in this tournament. And then the rest of the field is just a free for all. Like no player outside, like inside the top 25 enters these tournaments. And you feel like, oh, I'm super confident that if Alcaraz and Sinner drop, this guy is going to beat his opponents and be like the definite favorite to win the tournament. And so, in whether that's a good or bad thing, I feel like it kind of depends on your preference. Like to me, it is a little bit of a bad thing for the sport because I think in general, fans overall of any sport like to have a favorite team, a favorite player. And when anyone can win within the top 200, it becomes a lot harder for casual fans to recognize names. And so I feel like that makes it way more difficult to be engaged with a match. It's the reason that you don't have Challenger TV on in everybody's house that's a tennis fan. Is because people don't know who these players are. And so I feel like if you don't have that name recognition, it becomes a lot harder to get people to turn on tennis and watch these matches. So overall, I would probably say that it is better for tennis to have like a strong group of players in the top 25 that you can almost guarantee you're going to win a big tournament if the top two are missing. In terms of whether it's a weak era or a strong era, my argument is that like a strong era is when it consists of that smaller concentration of great players that almost never lose to low ranked players and mainly just lose to each other. And a weak era would be what this tournament implied we're at, where in any player qualifying has a not a likely shot, but a realistic shot of actually winning the title. And that's what it seems like. It seems like we're this is a signal that this is a weaker era than maybe the past 20 years have been.
Yeah, I wonder if this almost will open up the floodgates to other lower ranked players who may not have had the confidence, but now they can see it is possible. And I even saw Vacherot, I think he posted a screenshot of him texting someone basically saying, yeah, I'm just going to try my luck in Shanghai qualies this week because, hey, a good run can happen or a sick run can happen like out of nowhere. And that's just proof that it can't. So I think other players will look at this and gain confidence to actually play in these bigger tournaments. And, going up against Zverev, who cares? Going up against Medvedev, who cares? Like I'm going to win. We've seen these guys fall before, so it just makes it more possible.
Yeah, and I mean, you even look to last year, right? Poprin was a guy that was really had no expectation going into Canada, and then he came out on top there. I feel like that was the type of tournament that gives a player like Vacherot confidence, and then that this is just kind of the next step in that progression.
Definitely. And I think I don't want to relate Vashro completely to Morozhan because I don't think Morozhan has like won any big significant titles like this, but
No,
he has had some big upsets. He's beaten some big names, and now he's kind of that player who there's some name recognition to him, but it's just for once in a while beating good players. It's not like he's making deep runs in tournaments every week. So I'm just wondering if Vashro will be that name. Oh, yeah, he won the Masters 1000 last year as a qualifier, but like, what's he up to now? Or is he going to be a force to be reckoned with, someone that we know as a household name? That's the question.
yeah, I mean, I do remember them mentioning like during the final that if Vacherot is able to win this tournament and kind of stabilize in the top 40, there aren't many players other than like GMP that hit their serve harder. So that could be something that helps them stand out in the top 40.
Wow, let's go. Bring back the big serve. But
Exactly.
all right, let's jump into the episode here. But first, if you're liking the show, feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps support the channel. So, all right, I want to talk about the tournament in itself because there are a lot of like firsts in this tournament. Like I said in the intro, very storyline, fairy tale type of tournament. So just I'm gonna rip off some of these crazy stats. It was the first ATP title for Vacherot. First time a Monegasque player won an ATP title. And for those of you who don't know Monegasque, that is someone from Monaco. First qualifier to win the Shanghai Masters. And then first time since 1990 that two relatives faced each other in an ATP Masters 1000 final. Aiden, can you guess the other one?
I have literally, oh, wait. 1990. Could
1990.
it be the McEnroe brothers?
Yes, it
Well,
was.
I'm the goat.
You went from no
I'll be
confidence
honest,
to wait.
I was like, I have no clue. And then I was like, wait a second. Just inspiration hit me. And I was like, those are the only two brothers I feel like are any good.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And notice how I said ATP, not WTA or both, because the Williams sisters, I'm sure that
Yeah.
happened a lot.
Yeah.
But so I wanted to ask you this. Like, what do you think of the quality of the tournament with all the top, quote unquote, top guys dropping out? Do you think that the headlines kind of took away from the actual quality and the level of the tennis, or were you happy with all like the freak headlines and maybe appreciating the tournament for what it was versus insane like high level of tennis?
I think in terms of the quality of the tournament, it was interesting in terms of the headlines, like you said, but I feel like it was tough because you watch these guys play and it was just so confusing because you were like, where was this level like the rest of the year? And these guys are playing like incredible players, like they should be dominating every tournament, and then they they did this tournament, but I just wonder where that's going to be or whether it's going to stay in their repertoire. It was an odd one to watch for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, you got Vacherot like less than a month ago losing to the number like 800 ranked player in the world
Yeah,
and a challenger.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I look at I looked into all of his losses because I was like, this is just so insane. And like the one of the guy that's like number 800 isn't really like that guy isn't really ranked like that low, but he or his skill level isn't that low because he's super young. And so if you look at like the type of people he's beaten, that guy's probably closer to like a 100 to 200 player because he's beaten a bunch of like relatively high ranked guys. He just hasn't had the sort of experience yet. But he has lost to like guys ranked outside the top 300, and you're like, this is a legitimate guy that is not inside the top 250 that is beating a guy that now is going on to win the Masters 1000. And you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Given you look at how he played against someone like Runa, and you're like, how could that possibly be the same guy that almost lost in like qualifying?
Yeah, no. So you were pretty you weren't underwhelmed, I guess, by the level of tennis. You still thought that it was a good level and the fans got what they paid for.
Yeah, no, because these guys didn't. It wasn't like they went into all of these matches and everyone played super poorly. I mean, I guess the argument would be that there were some matches where guys struggled with the conditions, but other
Hmm.
than that, I would say that most of the players played at a pretty high level. It was just these guys played better out of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah. And I had mentioned it last week too that this is going to be a gritty tournament. This is going to be less about the actual tennis and more about who can sustain these brutal conditions. And we saw these two guys.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that was weird about Vacherot, I felt like, was if you watched the way he like rallied, he just kind of went for it at certain points. He would just go for a shot. And I guess this tournament was just working. And I wonder if just usually those shots just don't go in.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, going back to the quality, I didn't mind so much about like Rinderknech and Vacherot playing in the final because I still enjoyed the style of play too. Like you said, Vacherot was going for everything. He was hitting big, so that was fun to watch. And then Rinderknech has such good hands at the net. Like his volleys were nice. So all in all, it wasn't what I was used to seeing, but I still was entertained by the tennis.
Yeah, my only problem with like the final was that did seem as though they had a relatively similar style in terms of just relying on a massive serve. And so you're watching this tournament in the middle of the night, at least in California, and you're like, okay, none of these games are super exciting. It's just one dude just blasting a serve and then the other dude getting the balls and he's controlling it as well. So you're like, that to that extent, I kind of struggled to stay engaged at points.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And plus, like you said, just ungodly hours, right? That is crazy to be watching tennis at that time.
Yeah, the one tough thing about the tournament being in
Uh-huh.
China.
Uh-huh. But as far as like the storylines go, so as we know, Valentin Vacherot wins, Arthur Rinderknech finals and comes in second. They're cousins, which is pretty insane. Like I said, this doesn't happen a lot where relatives play each other. But this just made for a very emotional final as well, because I think either player was going to be pretty happy whether or not they won or lost. And we saw that in the trophy ceremony. Rinderknech was so emotional and so proud of his cousin. So that was nice to see like that part of the sport.
Yeah, 100%. It's always nice when there's a good storyline in the background.
For sure. And like I think we had mentioned this before too, but both guys had good runs. They beat big names. It wasn't like there were, crazy lucky runs with walkovers, retirements, all that. But who do you think personally had the better run out of these two?
I mean, I feel like you have to go with Vacherot overall because obviously he won the final and he was the lower ranked player. So you kind of have to say him. But I do think that Rinderknech, in terms of the quality of his wins and the difficulty of his opponents, was actually a better run because you look at the guys he faced FAA has been hot recently, has that momentum. Medvedev has been playing at a decent level, and then Zverev and Lehechka are both solid opponents. Whereas with Vacherot, it's like, yes, he beat Djokovic, but Djokovic's body kind of gave out, which I kind of predicted last week, and then that kind of takes away from that win. Still, he did beat Runa, he beat Bublik, but even then, I feel like the Rinderknech run was a little bit more difficult. But if you're just going who had the better run, probably Vacherot.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think Rinderknech had like the better wins, the bigger names. And the funny thing was, to me, I knew Rinderknech. I remember the name from I think 2023 when he and Fritz kind of went at it at that Wimbledon match, and then Fritz had told him have a nice flight home. And then fast forward a year, they played each other in Roland Garros, and this was when Fritz beat him and then shushed the crowd because it was the home French crowd.
Mm.
So that's when he started to be on my radar, but it wasn't for his tennis. It was just for like, all right, he's talking shit against Fritz. But then he beats Zverev at Wimbledon this year, and I'm thinking, oh, this is the guy who talks shit to Fritz. Like I still recognize his name, but now he's just cruising on, had a great tournament. So I feel like now Rinderknech is starting to become more of a household name.
Yeah, no, I mean 100%, especially after this tournament. Like this really put him on the map.
All right, now let's talk about the economic repercussions for these guys. Like Vacherot tripled his prize money. I think he had earned like $400,000 in his whole career.
Yeah.
Makes 1.1 million this
Yeah.
week.
That was something I was watching throughout the tournament too. I was like, he made like the quarterfinal, and I was like, dude, he like just doubled his yearly earnings. And then he makes the next round. You're like, dude, he like just tripled his yearly earnings. And he doubled his career earnings all of a sudden. You're like, each week he's going just more and more insane in terms of his earnings. And yeah, I mean, it's completely a career changer here.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. So, fun question for you here. Like, at what point in the tournament did you think that Vacherot actually had the possibility of winning this tournament? And like, same with Rinderknech.
I'll be honest. I feel like it wasn't until the final four because I expected Vacherot to fall to Runa. He was a top 10 opponent, and then on the other side, I kind of expected Rinderknech to lose to FAA, given how FAA just dominated Musetti. But after those matches, I was honestly completely flipped because I was like, okay, these guys can beat these top opponents, and you look at who they're playing in the semifinals, and you're like, okay, Vacherot is playing Djokovic, who has had a decently solid tournament, but is going to give out eventually. Like he's been struggling physically in all of these matches, and that's eventually going to come back to bite him, and it did. And on the other side, Rinderknech is playing Medvedev, who I feel like while he was playing well, he beat Deminar in a good match. He just had been kind of struggling physically in the tournament, and I feel like he also just you knew he wasn't going to be able to beat a player that was playing super well. And he wasn't able to. Rinderknech just outplayed him in that match. He was the better player. And so at that point, I was like, this is going to flip. And these are the two guys that are kind of the favorites to make the final. And that's what happened.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I did not consider either of them until they were both in the final, literally. Like I was just so convinced that Djokovic, this would be his time to actually win like the tournament. But I don't know. I feel like I just didn't consider these guys serious contenders at all. Even in the quarterfinals, I did a parlay because the odds were so skewed to the other side. I took Medvedev, Runa, and FA and Djokovic, all of them, and
Yeah.
not a single bet hit. So it's one of those where I was like, wow, this was extremely far off. And the funny
Yeah.
part was the night before I told my roommate, I was like, hey, you want a lock? You want a tennis lock?
Yeah.
Yeah,
He was like, bet
it's
the house.
opposite lock.
Yeah, no, I remember you told me this bet, and I was kind of like, dude, I don't know if like we should be super confident in these guys. I was like, he's gonna be struggling a little bit. I don't know about this one. And and then it happened, and I was like, even when I said that I wasn't confident in these guys, I still thought they were gonna win.
Yeah.
Like they were still the favorite in my mind, but it's just how it goes, I guess.
Yeah, and it was funny because I think you were either staying up later than I was, so you had seen the result first. So when I woke up and I was texting you, you were like, "Oh, like not gonna happen. And I just thought like, oh, maybe one of the legs busted. I'm like, ah, oh well. And then I looked and all of them busted. I'm like, oh well, I'd rather all of them bust than just one.
You know, I think I checked I just happened to
Yeah.
check the score.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of Djokovic and all these other guys not capitalizing, I wanted to touch on some of these guys and just think about or talk about how they should have capitalized on this tournament because the draw was wide open. So first, let's start with Medvedev. He makes a semifinal run. Is this a good result for him? Was it title or bust for Medvedev? Because I feel like in the past, he hasn't been getting these results. So I just want to hear it from you. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think compared to this year, it is a good result. And I think while on paper it was an opportunity squandered, it really wasn't because, like I said, Rinderknech was just the better player in their match, completely dictated the play. It's like if you look at some of the statistics from that match, I think Medvedev had way less errors, but that was because he just wasn't, he was playing so passively in that match, and Rinderknech was just the one completely running it and establishing how the match was going to be played, being more aggressive. Medvedev was just kind of letting it happen, and eventually that came back to bite him, and Rinderknech got it done.
Yeah, all in all, I'll say positive result for Medvedev. That would have been real funny if it was like Bonzi or someone else
Oh
that
my god,
that
if it
ended
was
up beating
Bonzi,
him.
yeah,
Yeah. Just like a fluke player. All right,
exactly.
next up, we got Zverev. So I threw him on here just because I know he wasn't early upset, but I feel like early on in the tournament he should have been a favorite to win. He loses third round to Rinderknech, which in hindsight is not all that bad because he did final the tournament.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like this is one of those classic losses, like we've seen earlier this year, for example, with Draper losing to Menzik in Miami, where in the moment you're like, that's kind of a bad loss. Like for Draper, he was coming off of a Masters 1000 win and then loses his first match in Miami. But then you go, okay, when I look back at the tournament, Menzik then went on to win the whole thing, and you're like, okay, I guess Draper's losing to him first round isn't as bad.
Yeah, exactly. So how about this guy Runa? What do you think? I mean, quarterfinal run, like he had that pretty impressive win against GMP. Good result, or you think title or bust?
I mean, I think it was not bad. Like he had some decent wins, and then he was a tiebreak away from beating Vacherot, but it just doesn't work out sometimes. And kind of similar to Zverev, like in the moment, you're like, this is really disappointing that he lost to Vacherot, and then Vacherot uh, beats Djokovic with a little bit of luck on his side, but then beats Rinderknech and wins the tournament. You're like, okay, so this was Runa was very close to being maybe the champion of this tournament.
Yeah, no, he very well could have been. I thought we were possibly going to see another Indian Wells type of tournament where he was going to make a run in a Masters 1000, but unfortunately, I do think this is still a good result for him because I think as long as he keeps stacking these quarterfinals and big results, that he'll have at least more experience to go into the next one. And plus, I think he's at the point in his career where he is starting to mature. I think like he may not be posting as big of results, but I think he's like his game overall is improving, if that
Yeah,
makes
I mean, if
sense.
he can consistently make
Right,
quarterfinal runs, that's going to be
exactly.
massive for him.
Exactly. And then Deminar, he makes the quarterfinals. I personally feel like this is a good result for him. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, makes the quarterfinals, loses to Medvedev, and uh, I feel like it's just the definition of good but not great, right?
Yeah.
Like Deminar, well, Runa, we said like felt like he could have been a contender to win the whole thing. Deminar was like, yeah, he made it the quarterfinals, but it never really felt like he was going to be the guy to step up and win this tournament, and it ended up being that he loses to Medvedev, who, as we know, was not doing great physically this tournament and lose to him in straight sets.
Yeah, I thought that Deminar would out focus, out hustle, out like condition Medvedev out there, but no, that did not happen at all. But all right, next guy, FAA, I'm throwing on here because he made a quarterfinal, and I think he seems to be trending in the right direction with this result. Do you think he could have won this tournament?
I mean, I feel like he definitely is, like you said, trending in the right direction. He beat Musetti very handedly. I thought he was obviously going to beat Rinderknech in that match, but I feel like you said, it's a positive. He's moving in the right direction, and it kind of builds on the momentum from the U.S. Open that he got all that positive sort of energy from, and now he's going into what's probably his best part of the season with a ton of momentum.
Hell yeah. All right, last but certainly not least, we got Djokovic. He makes the semifinal run, and I feel like that's just been the theme this season. He makes it to the semis, he makes it deep, but then just can't get over the hump. He physically maxes out, he hits a ceiling. I don't know are you expecting this was probably the last time for Djokovic to win a Masters 1000, and he can't
Yeah.
do it.
I mean, I just feel like what he would need was like both the perfect conditions in the tournament and like a timely walkover so that he can get rest in the middle of the tournament in order for him to actually make a title run at a big tournament. Just feels like so many factors would have to go his way at this point for that actually to happen.
Yeah, and I know we love talking about this, but Vacherot gets to say that he beat Djokovic now.
Yeah. I mean,
He's one
and
of those
and that he
guys.
won a Masters 1000. So
Right,
I don't
right.
even
That's
know which
true.
one's the bigger one, right?
That is very true. Very true.
But anyway, how about you ready to hop into segments?
Yes, let's do it.
Hey guys, before we jump in, we have some exciting news. We recently partnered with TruePro. They're a great place to buy strings, grips, and tennis apparel. Use discount code Painting Lines, that's one word, for 20% off store wide. You can find the link in our bio.
Alrighty, what's new in tennis? What'd you see this week?
So, other than the whole like Shanghai fairy tale, I kind of wanted to do something other than that. So, I'm gonna give you a little update on Alcaraz's injury. Apparently, what had happened was a grade 2 ankle sprain back in Tokyo. I knew he like twisted his ankle. I didn't know that it was that bad. I think there's 3 grades, I'm assuming,
Yeah,
but
I was like, I don't know what grade two is.
yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah.
like, is it
Anyway,
a 1 to 5 scale or is it like a 1 to 1,000 scale?
yeah, sounds bad, but the good news is he plans on playing in Paris in the Paris Masters. But I personally don't think that he'll be 100% healed for it. So I think this is going to be one of those cases where we got to watch out for him. Like, granted, he did win Tokyo after spraining the ankle, but I feel like the talent is going to be way more stacked in Paris.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like yeah, it's the last Masters 1000 of the year, so definitely going to be a big tournament. But I think he wants to compete, and so he's gonna try to be back for that.
Yes, sir. How about you? What did you see this week?
I saw some updates in the race to Turin because obviously time's running down, and it honestly feels like a 2-man race between Musetti and FAA. But I've seen some stirrings in the news about whether Djokovic will play actually in the tournament, especially with kind of how his body is feeling and how things like this tournament are happening, where his body's kind of breaking down. So if he chooses not to play, like he chose not to play last year and he qualified, I feel like it actually makes the battle here a lot more interesting because then it puts a bunch of guys like that are actually behind FA by around 400, 500 points actually into contention with maybe a big result where 11 through 15 in the race to turn, which is as far down as Medvedev, could still maybe make a big performance in the last few tournaments and take that step up to take what would be number 10 in the actual race to turn rankings, but would be jumping Draper, who's done for the year, and jumping Djokovic into that 8th spot.
Yeah, and I'm wondering too, because Alcaraz, his ankle may get worse after Paris and he may have to pull out or, so he could play his exhibitions and whatnot. But yeah, I feel like even if you're an alternate, you got a pretty good chance of possibly playing here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the funny thing is I actually was looking at the way you qualify for the race to turn, and apparently it's not just the top 8 players. Did you know that?
I did not know that. So what
The way
else
it
is it?
actually works is it's the top 7 players, and then the next qualifying is if you're in like the top 20 and you won a slam. So like if you win a slam and like play not great for the rest of the year, you can still make the race to turn because they value that over being like the number 8 guy in the world.
Well, none of these guys have to worry about that, huh?
It's true. It's true. But I just thought that was a funny thing when I was looking at the qualification of it.
Yeah, that is like a one of those, I feel like in the head notes, just asterisk, like, all right, read the fine print to qualify.
100%. No, I feel like it's going to happen in like 4 or 5 years from now. Someone's going to win a slam, and then they're gonna be like, "Oh, I'm making the ATP finals," and the person in eighth is gonna be like, "What? What are you
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about?"
No, I'm ranked eighth, and they're
Yeah,
gonna be excited about it too. They're like,
exactly.
oh, what?
You're like, actually, the rules say that I actually get in.
Yes, yes.
How about bet of the week? Could you go for here?
So I'm going with our boy Tristan Schoolkit plus 105 over fellow countryman Adam Walton. So I was looking at some stats. They are 0-0 head to head against each other on the main tour, but Schoolkit is 4-3 against him on the Challenger, ITF, and then qualifying circuit. And he's beaten him the last three times. So I'm just kind of going with the momentum play. I think he's a better player, and I think he's going to get it done. Plus, I'm a little biased because we had him on the show. He's a fellow guest, so gonna root for him there.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like it's definitely a reasonable bet and some decent odds there.
Yeah, man. How about you? Who are you taking?
I'm just gonna go with. I feel like sometimes I my bets aren't always really bets because I can't actually take them some of the time living in California, and so I'm just gonna go with an upset alert. That's what I'm gonna call this section for me. I'm going Poprin versus Korda as a match to watch if you're looking for an upset. Poprin is the plus 175 underdog here, so it's definitely a good chance of him being able to pull this one off. They have a 1-1 head to head. Obviously, Poprin beat him in Canada last year. And so I just want to say it like this. Poprin has the tools. He has actually won an indoor hard turning before. And I feel like his serve could be really dangerous here. And that a lot of factors that I think are going in his favor in this matchup going against Korda.
Wow, I'm honestly shocked that Poprin is plus 175 against Corda. I feel like it should be way more even than that.
Yeah, I think what separates it is I think Korda is the higher ranked guy, and also I think if you look at their career indoor matches, uh, Korda has a better record, but I still feel like Poprin has definitely a great chance.
Oh yeah, I think so too. Unfortunately, because I like Corda a lot.
Yeah, and a note aside, also, I think that Tomic versus Mute, which is coming on in a few hours, actually, might just be cinema in terms of like the antics.
That is going to be unreal. I'm excited to see the highlights there. I'm really I didn't
Yeah,
know Tomic was going to be in the main draw. Wow.
yeah. Does he even try? That's the real question.
I don't know. I don't know, man.
But anyway, how about a match of the week?
So match of the week, I'm going with Bergs. Zuzu Bergs taking down Gabriel Diallo in an absolute thriller, three-set thriller. So Bergs dropped the first set, but then he battled back, won the second, and then won the third 10-8. So it was a very tense third set tiebreaker too, extremely close. And I like this match because I like Bergs as a player. I thought he did a really good job of attacking. He was hitting like great approach shots and following up and wasn't winning every single point, but at least he was playing aggressive and, following up shots at the net. So that was exciting to watch. And then just his emotion too. Like at the end of the match, you can just tell how tense it was because he just collapsed to the floor and then acted like he won the whole tournament. Funny enough, when like players lay down and like takes him 3 minutes to actually go up and shake the other player's hand. But anyway, after the handshake, he like runs over to the middle of the court, jumps, like lets out a roar to the crowd. It was just got me the chills. Like it was pumping me up watching it. So just love the fact that he like expressed all that emotion, after having saved the match point and then that put him into his first Masters 1000 quarterfinal. So all in all, just great match to watch.
Yeah, I feel like it's really one of those things where you have to appreciate that these guys, it's a massive accomplishment to make your Masters 1000 quarterfinal, even though like it doesn't seem like as big of a deal when you're watching it. Sometimes you're like, oh, okay, all he did was win a round of 16 match, but this is a massive tournament.
I think he's a guy who benefited majorly here economically too because of Sinner, Alcaraz, and other top seeds not being in the tournament. Like this guy gets a chance to play in a quarterfinal, makes a ton of money versus, probably what he does on the rest of the tour. So just happy to see him.
Yeah, that is kind of a weird thing where it's like, yeah, the financial aspect is so massive and it doesn't really impact Alcaraz and Sinner, I feel like that much.
No, not one bit. But what about you? What was your match of the week?
I went with Medvedev surviving against Tien. Just an absolutely insane match because, especially because of the context of Medvedev losing to Tien the week before in Beijing and this match looking so similar through the first two sets. Obviously, the first set, super tense. Medvedev broke to serve for the set at 5-3, got broken right back. Then Tien got or maybe it was 5-4, but Tien then got a set point at 5-6 on Medvedev's serve, couldn't break. Ended up going to a tiebreak, and Medvedev takes it 8-6 in the tiebreak. Then you have a second set where Medvedev takes a 3-0 lead and leads 15-40 on Tien's serve. So he was almost 2 breaks up. And then the tide just turns, and Tien wins 5 straight games. And Medvedev was like visibly struggling physically out there. He actually managed to break back, though, force it to a tiebreak, and Tien ends up taking it. You're like, oh my God, this is so similar to last week. And Medvedev looks like he's maybe going to retire again in this third set. But you go into the third set, and Medvedev kind of starts to regain some composure. Looks like he's not struggling quite as much physically. And then at 4-4, he manages to get a break and then serves it out. And I think it was just the grittiness of Medvedev to stay in this match, despite being so obviously struggling physically. I think that was just a massive win for him. And I think it also was a positive mental, because if he had lost again to Tien and his body had given out again, that would have just, I think, put him in a pretty dark spot.
Yeah, this was a great match. I remember having to watch the scoreline live versus like actually watching the match. And I think we were texting too. And I'm thinking like, oh, Medvedev blew it. Like this is done. This is it. And then just having to like follow the score, like watch him battle back. It was just crazy, crazy match.
100%. Yeah, it was so tense watching it live, because you're like, is Medvedev's body going to give out? Is he going to be able to actually sort of step up and play a little bit more active in this match? Because it was very interesting. Medvedev had to do something. It felt as though Tien was actually, if it got into a longer rally, he was the one that was super favored, whereas usually that's what you expect of Medvedev.
Yeah, I bet Medvedev was thinking in the back of his head, like, I will do whatever it takes to win this match because I am not going 0-3 to Lerner Tien. He is
Yeah.
not my daddy, not today.
Yeah, I think that's maybe something that's going on there.
That's what it was.
All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.